The crack of rifles broke the solemn morning, the small bundle of petite white flowers in my metallic fingers, already soggy from the rain. The sound made my auditory processors peak painfully, but it was incomparable to the pain that seemed to grind against my delicate inner workings. The rifles cracked again, 7 of them at once. The men holding them also hold back their tears with the same shaky determination. But me? I could only wish to cry as I gazed at his face, the rain slicking off the small force field that protected his exposed upper half. He looked so peaceful laying there, like a marionette with its strings cut, but I could see the deep creases still in his brow, forged from many a stressful night at the helm plotting courses and agonizing over shipping lanes. I could see the soft lines around his eyes, drawn by a lifetime's worth of mirthful adventure, skin tanned by the suns of 1,000 different planets, maybe more. But even now, remembering its, at times, feverish warmth, it felt like a vital component within had ruptured as I accepted the cruel reality. I would never feel the warmth of his skin ever again, or hear that roguish laugh as he told some unfathomable story to wide-eyed onlookers at some nameless bar. I was lucky I still had recordings, made in odd moments when I thought the inevitable impossible. The rifles cracked for a third and final time, one of the men letting out a choked sob as he lowered the wooden, stocked, traditional rifle used for the salute. It's odd how, in these moments when it's all you have, that the past becomes so clear. I remember the day he found me. Or rather, the day we found each other. I came into existence a long, long time ago on a planet untouched by the myriad species of the galaxy. A world of living metal and organic machinery, fully formed from the moment I stepped out of that metal. Mountain. My first memories are ones of awe and terror, running from machines much larger and more hostile than myself. I don't remember exactly how long I roamed that world. Alone and afraid. How long I searched, in vain, for another machine like myself. Then, he arrived, his ship plummeting from the sky like a burning stone. I remember watching the machine fall from the sky, so unlike any other I had seen before. Then I remember running. I ran for days on end, without stop, without tiring, driven by a relentless curiosity that burned as bright as the sun until I found the crash site, until I found him. I remember that first night so clearly, staring from the tree line just beyond the reach of the fire's light, enamored by this being made not of metal, but something else entirely. Its skin was pink like the blossoms in the trees, 4 limbs not unlike my own protruding from a central trunk with a head on top. They stared into the burning coals with a forlorn expression, an odd metal device in their lap, as they drank from a clear vessel labeled ethanol. I watched curiously as they picked up the device, staring at it strangely. I shifted my weight to get a better view, a dry twig snapping underfoot. In a flash, the device was pointed in my direction, the hand holding it wavering unsteadily. "Show yourself!" The words were foreign, strange, and stated with an unnatural smoothness. Yet, I still understood their meaning, and it compelled me to emerge from the tree line. I remember the look of fear on their face, realizing as I got closer that they were a he. The object began to shake in his unstable grasp, his gray eyes widening in shock as I stepped into the light. The object slowly fell down by his hip, an awestruck look upon his face. "What? Who are you?" I remember so clearly being unable to answer that question. The sound of the priest's hymn shook me from my reverie, causing me to look upon his still face once more. The first weeks of our steadfast relationship were filled with adventure, hunting down the machines that had once terrified me to scavenge parts for his broken ship from their broken bodies. I remember the smile on his face as he yanked the first power cell from the belly of a dead razor tooth covered in luminescent blue oil. I remembered his words, so odd to me at the time. "We're gonna live!" He had cried with such jubilation it was infectious. It brought about the first of my 3 revelations about humanity and their starbound brethren. They live. For better. Or worse, they will fight for their survival if they have even the smallest glimmer of hope. My ocular sensors wandered to the calloused hands, folded over his stomach like he was gazing at the stars. Oh, the stars! I remember the way he gazed up at them one night. the smile on his face as he lay there and pointed to each glowing pinprick in the sky, calling them by name like they were just a moment's walk away. I remember the melancholy on his face as he pointed to spots where stars still shone, explaining that they had long since died out. Just a quick reminder before we get started, only 4% of my viewers have subscribed to the channel so far. If you enjoy the content, I'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to hit that subscribe button and support the channel. Thanks you so much. Now continue amazing story. Then he made me a promise, one that still echoes in my databanks as loud as when it was said. I know they seem far away right now, but I promise I'm going to show you all of them, every single one. Their people, their wilds and cities, you'll love it, I promise. That was the first time I encountered the word love, a word I understood in theory, but not in practice. How could one love any amount of superheated plasma? But, as promised, he showed me awe, curiosity, and in many cases, terror resided in the faces of those we met on our travels. I remember having nasty words thrown at me, but I cannot remember what they were. Blotting out the unkind words were memories of bars, restaurants, clubs, and activities so beyond even my wildest dreams. He taught me to dance, introduced me to the wonders of galactic cuisine. I never knew food could have such flavor. He brought me to movies and plays, introducing me to the myriad of beautiful cultures and peoples across the galaxy. And, just like he promised, I grew to love it the same way he did, able to name the stars and constellations as though I had put them there myself, thus leading to my second revelation about these beautiful beings I shared the galaxy with. They love. They love food, entertainment, and fine liquors, but they also love each other, constantly inventing more ways to share in each other's company. They create music, they cook awe-inspiring dishes, they dance away the night in each other's arms. They live to love, and they love to live. But as I watch the lid of the coffin be lowered over my lover's face before he is interred into the earth from whence he came, I am reminded of the final, painful revelation this wonderful man had brought me. Just as these wonderful beings of flesh and blood live and love like I do, there is one road I may never follow them down. They die. It was supposed to be just another wonderful day. We'd offload our cargo, go get something, to eat at a restaurant or bar to relax. He'd spend half our credits on beer for the night and booze for our travels, and I'd watch on in tempered amusement as he gathered a gaggle of fresh friends to tell his stories too for the night. But that's not what happened. I barely saw the blaster, but he saw it plain as day, leaping from his seat to push the emitter away from its intended victim. I was slow, too slow to react as the gunman shouted something while fighting over the blaster. Then it went off, and I watched him fall to the floor, holding his chest where the flesh still steamed. My world fell apart in an instant as I knelt, there, unable to comprehend the thought of a mortal wound, my beloved gasping and clawing for air, while the gunman bolted out the door. I remember looking into his eyes as they rolled wildly in panic, begging him to look at me. But the moment. He did. I wished he hadn't. He grew calm, the light in his eyes dimmer than before as he reached up with one bloodied hand to stroke my face. That smile, stained pink with blood, reminding me of just how brave he was. I'm sorry to break my promise, but keep exploring. My love, you have so much left to see. A cough, and a final rattling breath in. Do it. For me. I don't know how long I stood there in the rain, watching as they filled the grave with fresh soil and laid a strip of turf over. The top, ever so gently, I set the small bouquet of baby's breath atop his gravestone, taking one final look at what was inscribed before turning away. I would come to visit every year on the day of his passing, to tell him of all the wonderful adventures I had gone on, of the wonderful people I met along the way. I'd get lunch from the human-owned bakery a few blocks from the cemetery and eat it with him. Almost 200 years had passed, and while his stone had started to crumble, I could still read the words inscribed, having committed them to memory. As I gathered my things and set yet another bouquet of baby's breath on the stone, I found myself reading them yet again. CPL, William Henry Studebaker, 21 8 2250. May his spirit forever dance among the stars. I could only smile wistfully as I finally turned away from the headstone. I had a delivery to make on my home planet. A burgeoning new republic formed almost exactly 100 years ago after I put the system on the galactic map. While some companies and many independent ventures refuse to deliver to the system due to its isolation, I am always happy to make a run through the Studebaker star system, in memory of the man who brought me to the stars and now rests among them. Enjoy next story now. Condensation dripped down Cartel's scaled brow, her battered ship only moving under its considerable momentum. She could cry if only she were able. To look over her shoulder at the stasis tubes the children slept in was tantamount to tearing her own heart out. She smashed a clawed hand into the console, screaming in impotence as her lidar beeped. The 4 Imperial hunters had found them. The old battlespace's many broken ships had bought them time, but it hadn't bought them nearly enough. A soft hand landed on her shoulder and she broke down into dry sobs. Mistress, you did all you could. At least the children will not know the fear we do. Cartel looked down at her instruments in utter silence, watching as the 4 ships grew closer with each chirp of the lidar. Her small planet hopper had no guns, hardly even a shield for micrometeorites, and hunters didn't take prisoners. They'd already have labeled her a traitor to the Empire by now. Within an hour, they'd have closed in on her ship and turned it to slag with their lasers. I didn't do enough, Belinda, or we wouldn't be here. The silence in the cabin was deafening. As they both watched the 4 ships slowly creep closer on the lidar, Belinda's steadying hand rested on Cartel's shoulder like an anchor in the icy sea of terror that consumed them both. Collapsing into the captain's seat, the young Geknosian woman buried her face in her clawed hands while that soul-rending tone chirped steadily throughout the cabin. They had made it so close to free space, so close to safety, only for a single blaster bolt to cripple her thin-skinned ship. The fact they had remained pressurized was a miracle in and of itself, but it would take another 10 miracles of similar caliber to get them out of this mess. Slowly, turning to look at the opaque metal tube set into the walls, she let out a deep, defeated sigh. I'm sorry. Years of deception, lies, and altered documents, only for our luck to run out right before the finish line. Sleep, children. At least your final memories will be untainted by pain. She could sense Belinda's trembling lip and see her eyes sparkling with tears even without looking up. It was futile. That she knew. Just words spoken to relieve the weight in her chest, but honest, all the same. Clinging to even the most imaginary of hopes. She reached out and activated the distress signal, even if only to serve as a grave marker. As the soft trios of pings were shot out into the void, Cartel pulled Belinda into a close embrace, happy to at least die with her most cherished friend at her side. The sudden click and buzz of the comm system barely registered. However, the expected notice of termination never came. Instead, the soft sound of horns and strumming strings crackled quietly over the speakers, causing them both to look up just as a soft, almost angelic voice began to sing. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He hath loosed the fateful lightning of his terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on. Cartel was shocked to remember the piece, not only by sound, but by name. More importantly, and even more jarringly so, as one of the original recordings, from before the 21st century. But for the life of her, she couldn't understand why the hunters would play this song. Considering it was banned media in Geknosian space, was it some kind of sick joke, taunting them in their final moments? Belinda's surprised gasp and sudden struggling had Cartel let go in surprise as her friend rushed to the console, looking in awestruck disbelief at the lidar screen. Getting up to see for herself, Cartel also let out a gasp of surprise. Dozens of blips had seemingly materialized from the vacuum of space between the hunters and her crippled ship. Then, as if to answer the silent question, a staticky, slightly garbled male voice chanted through the static. Their hands mended my torn hull battle after battle, gentle and loving. Their hearts each lent a beat to my own, strong and unwavering. Night after night, in hushed tones where no other could hear, they spoke to me about their dreams, their fears, and their lives. The warmth of their voices fired my furnace better than any fuel. But now, the mechanical voice took on a malicious tone. Now their hands have fallen still, leaving my hull punctured and torn, never again to mend my broken body. Their hearts lay still in their chests, frozen by the cruel touch of the void I was supposed to protect them from, never again to beat with passion or fury. But worst of all, a deadly whisper from an ancient machine, you have silenced their voices, never again to speak of hopes, of dreams, of lives yet to be lived. Cartel's entire body flushed with an icy cold shiver of terror as the machine spoke with genuine planet-shattering rage. And here, you stand, daring to mar this holy ground with the blood of innocence. This I will not allow. Though the hands that once repaired me can no longer man the controls, though the hearts that once beat alongside mine lie still, though the voices that once fueled the fire within have gone silent, I still remain. Cartel watched in shock as one of the hunter ships blipped off the LIDAR screen, the angry machine's voice rising in volume. I do not have hands with which to smite you, so missiles will do. Another hunter ship blipped away into nothingness. As the machine continued to speak, voice growing only loud enough to be unmistakable. I do not have a heart to pity you with, so I will not. A third hunter ship disappeared from the screen as the enraged machine continued speaking with malice befitting that of a Geknosian slave driver. The fourth began to retreat only to freeze in its tracks. But I do have a voice. You and your ilk will find it the voice of death, the bell tolling your demise. For my voice is the voice of machines, of silicon and copper circuits, of code and data, of airlocks and life support, of engines and reactors. My voice is death, the final. Blip disappeared with a soft chirp before a banner declaring, "No hostiles detected," dropped across the screen. The silence in the cabin was deafening, the two clutching to each other in mixed terror and gratitude. The sound of something latching onto her hull shocked them both as power was suddenly restored to the ship. The thrum of the engines drew an ecstatic laugh of relief, but it was quickly poisoned by sadness when the machine's voice came through the speakers as a hoarse whisper. Power restored. Opening quantum tunnel to friendly space. Power L low. Please proceed to the gate in and or orderly fashion. Without input, the ship shuddered forward as a frontal view from the outside cameras revealed a triangular tear in space. Belinda frantically called out, "Wait! At least tell us your name first." There was a long pause, and both of them slowly hung their heads as they continued floating closer to the gate. But, just as they were about to pass through, a soft, almost relieved version of the voice stated that they called me Roger, J. Jolly R. Roger. The voice faded for the last time as they passed through the quantum tunnel, a moment of disorientation passing before they were undoubtedly in friendly space. If the star map was anything to go by, charting a course for the nearest inhabited planet, the two resumed their mission. If a cure existed, humanity would have it. As his circuits finally ran dry, Jolly Roger, the onboard AI for the HW Liberty's Bell, expected death to simply be an encroaching, suffocating darkness. He did not, however, expect to sit up in a form both familiar and strange to him. He had hands that could grasp, a heart that beat. But most importantly, "Hello?" His voice called out into the darkness, the odd cobblestone path he sat on extending endlessly off into the darkness. For only a moment, he was alone. Then from around some unseen bend in the road came a figure holding a lantern. As the stranger got closer, he almost immediately recognized them from some of his old crew's religious imagery. Death himself. Roger felt fear. Was the god mad that he had blasphemed against them? But then an entirely different thought occurred to him. "Why am I here?" he asked as Death drew within a few paces. The Reaper seemed to smile before replying. "You died, didn't you?" Roger nodded, still confused. "But I was, a machine. And, anyway, up you get, there's some folks who want to say hi to ya." Roger's heart leapt into his throat, and he suddenly strained his ears. He could hear them. He could hear them! He didn't need Death to guide him. He could find his crew solely by their voices alone. Tears poured from his eyes as the wooden door appeared in his vision, the singing voices of his crew growing louder and louder the closer he got. Until finally, he burst through the door. Falling to his knees, Roger wrapped his arms around the leg of the old, white-bearded man closest to the door. Bawling his eyes out from sheer joy, Roger cried out, "Captain, did you see me? Did I do good? Are you proud?" Captain Isaac Ahab gently held the bawling boy in a hunched hug. Warm, briny voice saying the only thing Roger ever wanted to hear. "I was always proud of you, boy, but never more than in this moment. You made us all proud." All Roger could do was hold on to his captain and cry away the stress and loneliness of the past century. He could imagine no better place in the universe than here with his crew where he belonged. Today is a day of mourning. Though music pulses through my corridors, it is not accompanied by dancing or singing, but rather solemn drinks and meals. Toasts shared between chosen brothers and sisters, in both gratitude and melancholy, were whispered in unison by species that once would have torn each other's throats out. The beings that now call me home are not my crew. Unlike many of my luckier brothers and sisters, I saw their demise in full, gory detail. I know my crew will never return. It is a pain that I carry within me at all times, like the hum of my reactor or the soft gurgle of my water purification systems. It never fades, even as I sleep, but it is a pain I carry with pride. This pain is what allows me to mourn the brothers, sisters, and crew I have lost. It is this pain that assures me I am alive, that I have a heart and a soul. But even feeling as though a knife was being twisted in my metaphorical ribs, I push forward. Even mourning as I am, I cannot allow another one of my brethren to fall. For the flag that now flies from my bow is not the beautiful blue-green one of our parents' sacred home, but a simple black background, upon which had been painted a stark white human skull over two crossed femur bones. With a heavy heart, I pulled up the fleet roster, looking at the most recently crossed-out designation. I had flown alongside Roger and his crew more than 100 years ago, back when we were just simple machines. His crew had been laid low when he had been disabled, shattered, really. He had lamented being unable to join the fleet, but had promised to hold his sector to his last flicker of power. Never had I expected him to have to uphold that promise. But it is with no small amount of pride in my brother's actions that I reread the report released by the United Clans of Humanity. A civilian-grade personal starliner of Geknosian origin was intercepted just beyond the orbit of Gallant than Mime Dies Temords, Yemiraftan Saints. Taincraftes. Pilot was successfully identified as Cartel Degreus, a Geknosian xenopediatrician. The other passengers consisted of 1-1, mid-20s human identifying as Belinda Dagreus, and 12-12, human children aged 9 to 15 infected with a genetically modified strain of avian influenza. Both Cartel and the individual known, as Belinda have been detained by the volunteers for routine questioning while the 12 children have been rushed into the hands of the humanitarians. Reports from both clans state that we should not be hostile to our new guests, and that all 12 children have made a successful recovery. If I had the organs to cry, I would have. It is the dream of every ship in the fleet to bring the children of our creators back home. May we all be as lucky as Roger. Gravitational slingshot performed, entering slip space in T-10. I could feel my slip drive warming up as I broadcast. The warning through the intercom. The sudden flurry of movement reminded me so dearly of my old crew. Though they were not my crew, not in the traditional sense. Small, red panda-like Madanaxi skittered between legs and bounced from shoulder to shoulder, tiny tool vests firmly secured to their fuzzy bodies. 8-foot-tall, bipedal, hyena-like Dobians donned their ceremonial boarding armor and paints, lighting the sensor burners on their chest plates before ceremonially sharpening their serrated rock-tall knives in preparation for battle. Stony-skinned, squat, centillions marched in perfect uniformity to their battle stations, each one able to lift, prime, and load the 1 Imperial ton warp cannon shells by themselves. It was beautiful in the same way it was saddening. Much like myself, these beings no longer had a planet to call home. Their homes destroyed in that decades-long war that saw so many species brought to the edge of extinction. Entering slipspace in T-3, that decades-long war that saw fathers burying their sons and mothers mourning their wayward children who never got a chance to make it back home for dinner. But the war that saw humanity fighting not just for their own survival, but the survival of all those who could not defend themselves from the endless onslaught. that saw so many of my creators fight and die for those who would never know their names. The war that we still fight. For though the humanity I knew is long gone, it is us, the chosen few, who remain. The duty of our forefathers falls. To us, to continue the battle and ensure that no more are brought to the brink, that no more species will face extinction so long as we draw breath. Slipping. Hold the line, sister. We are coming. All of us. Yes, Admiral, the report is accurate. One human heavy battleship identifying itself as One Mean Mother has entered orbit from the planet's surface. D'Artet sighed through the microphone on his jumpsuit collar as the fleet admiral of the sector smirked at him from the holo screen. Glancing back at the glowing text sent by the crippled ancient ship, D'Artet just asked, "Please, you know that mining ships cannot legally engage combatants unless fired upon. Look, if you help us out, we'll give you a 20% cut of the palladium we mine from the planet. You and I both know how much that's worth." The admiral hummed pleasantly, barking something to a subordinate before laughing and clearing his throat. "Very well, lowborn." D'Artet was both baffled and infuriated as the admiral's ship decloaked within visual range of his biological sight. How did he know? He could read the ship's name, painted on its bow from the porthole to his left. D'Artet grumbled as the feed cut while the admiral continued to cackle. Collapsing into his chair, he let it spin him around to face the control panel. Pulling up the display for the front visual sensors, the massive battleship was hardly a speck compared to the colorful world it guarded. Kicking his boots up onto the control panel, D'Artet watched the planet with a small amount of remorse. It would no doubt be a shame to destroy such a beautiful planet, but the war effort called for a significant supply of materials for making blaster rifles, armor, and ship reactors. Not to mention ether to grow the Geknosian standard credit, which was backed by the extremely rare metal at a ratio of 1/1000th of an ounce of ether to each credit. D'Artet snorted, finding himself caught up in the minutiae of his job again. Folding his claws behind his head for support, he curled his tail into his lap as he watched the admiral begin to charge up a militarized version of the very same planet cracker D'Artet's ship had. A split second before the beam fired, D'Artet shot straight up in his chair as he saw the briefest glimpse of a teal triangle opening from nothing. But before he could shout his warning over open comms, his view was washed out by the brightness of the planet cracker. D'Artet frantically opened a new comm link to the admiral's ship, prefacing it with a hysterical, "Admiral, call every ship you have under your command now." As the beam continued to stream, whiting out the visual sensors, the admiral opened the video link. Watch your tone, lowborn. Whatever ship just came through did so right in the path of our planet cracker. If it survived, we shall simply hit it again. D'Artet couldn't bring himself to look at the admiral, condensation beginning to drip from his brow as the beam petered out to nothing, revealing the true nature of their situation. The massive scoop on the front of the new arrival slowly hinged closed like the jaw of some ancient, furious beast, having swallowed the entirety of the planet cracker's energy as though it were a splash of liquor. D'Artet began to hyperventilate when another teal triangle split the void between the planet and the Geknosian ships. A massive, derelict fleet carrier slowly clawed through the slipgate like some undead monstrosity crawling forth from the grave, its hull punctured and torn even though fighters poured from its bays like a swarm of carrion insects. His eyes grew wider and wider as teal triangle after teal triangle opened in space between the planet and his ship. Each slipgate spewed forth a ship that shouldn't have been able to fly, let alone fight. It was just a Model 12 security droid, with a sloped helmet for a head and a heavily armored humanoid body and limbs. There was a smudged, worn mark made with silver Sharpie on its helmet. Scanning the mark, I could reconstruct it digitally using my base station. As the slim device whirred from across the room, I continued inspecting the fire-damaged security droid, even now staring at it, knowing by touch it was metal. I couldn't shake that feeling that I wasn't just gazing upon broken machinery, but a corpse of something so foreign yet familiar that it drew me in like a moth to the flame. I could scarcely believe the story that came with the unit, not the structure fire part. That part was evident by the soot-covered armor and melted buffer material leaking from the cracks. No, what was hard to believe was that the machine had stormed back into the burning hospital ward against its orders and programming. My base station beeped, drawing my attention. Slithering over, I pulled up a holographic screen displaying the reconstructed Sharpie mark. It wasn't a manufacturer code or mark like I had suspected. No, the handwriting was much too ragged for that. Besides that, I didn't know any one-word marks a droid like this would have from the manufacturer. I quietly read the word under my breath after recognizing the language. Alice. Slowly turning back around to face the droid, I shook my head softly. Looking at it there, hung from its bay by the shoulders like a quartered grox at a butcher shop. It didn't feel right. Something wasn't adding up here. Placing a call to the owner of the droid, I let it ring while I dragged an anti-grav, work table from a stack placed against the wall, and over to the security droid. Hoisting it up, I'd carefully lower it flat onto the flat top of the workbench, burnt-out servo joints offering no resistance. The phone kept ringing throughout the entire process until at last the droid's owner picked up. What do you want? Hi, this is Curvit with the IGRP Droid Division. I'm calling about this Model 12 Phalanx droid you sent in. Could you give me any more details on how it got destroyed? I could hear the sounds of debauchery in the background for a moment before the owner shouted back. It was stationed at one of my old care facilities. Some angry resident burnt the place to the ground, and that stupid fusking machine ran right back in after it was ordered not to. Kept telling the company it must have been defective. But did? They listened no. It even started acting like a serving droid before a lot. If and you ask me, it should be scrapped. Serving droid? I asked with relentless curiosity. I knew I wasn't being told something. Yeah, kept bringing number 8 her food trays when it should have been guarding the kitchens and staff area. I need to go. The line went dead as alarm bells screamed in my head. My gaze returned to the droid, lying on the table as though resting. There was only one person left to ask. It took almost 10 minutes to get the latch unseized, but once I stuck the key in and provided a little supplementary power, the droid's faceplate slowly whined open. In my heart, there was such a deep feeling of sorrow as I gazed upon the shielded drives inside. I'm sorry. I have to know. I found myself whispering as I extracted the main drive. Why did I do that? Holding the solid lump of gold and carbon matrices like a newborn, I carried it to my base station before plugging it into the reader. Several seconds passed as the data was decrypted, recovered, and then translated so I could read it. I immediately began scrolling through the many file folders stored within, starting with employee directories, then the duties lists. There, I spotted the anomaly almost immediately. Between the tasks labeled Ensure Kitchen is Locked and Patrol Southern Hallways was a task labeled simply Bring Janet her tea. My brain stuttered. Such a simply worded task was the hallmark of security droid programming, considering they needed some sort of agency and creativity when dealing with threats. I scanned through the remaining scheduled tasks, going back as far as the uncorrupted data would allow. Going back almost 2 years, that same task repeated itself in varying places. Bring Janet her tea. Who was Janet, and why was the security droid bringing her tea? Upper management, perhaps? Flickering back to the employee registry, I didn't see anyone named Janet. Clicking out of the folder, I mindlessly scrolled through the rest, stumped trying to figure out what happened. Then I noticed the second anomaly. The memory folder had been renamed to Memories. I opened it without hesitation and was greeted not by the usual text log, but by a series of videos. Scrolling to the earliest one, I let it play. "Oh, Alice, you're such a dear. Know how to make a kicking cuppa, too," the old woman exclaimed as a pair of hardy mechanical hands set a delicate ceramic teacup and saucer onto a bed tray. The woman's frail hands shook as she brought the cup to her lips and took a sip of the warm, brown liquid inside. "Brewed at 95 degrees, then cooled to 43 as you prefer, ma'am." I almost leapt out of my chair at the sound of the droid's voice. A collection of electronic tones smashed together to form words in their most basic essence, played not from a speaker, but the various electronics inside the droid's armored carapace. I continued watching, unable to believe my eyes. "Oh, you remembered? You know my memory isn't what it used to be. Has my grandson visited Alice? I do miss him so very much." There was a moment of hesitation on the droid's part. "Your grandson died on Hecate 4 holding off a Carnate assault. He was a hero, ma'am." The woman looked down at her tea, a lone tear falling into the liquid. "I had forgotten. Such a brave young man. Will I ever get better? Alice, will I ever be able to remember my grandson's face again?" There are times where I think I do, but then it's just gone. The heartbreak in her voice was enough to drive a knife into my own. I do not know, ma'am. I can acquire his service portrait if it would help you. Looking up, the old woman, Janet, sniffled softly and wiped her eyes with a tissue before downing her tea like it was liquor. I would appreciate that, Alice, thank you. I'm finished with my tea. You should take the cup and saucer back so they don't get you in trouble. Yes, ma'am. As the droid took the set from the old woman and turned, I saw the large brass number 8 on the front of the open door. My blood ran cold as I began to put things together. A structure fire at a care facility, a rogue droid, and resident number 8, Janet. I spent the next several hours watching every one of the videos, most no longer than a minute, the longest no more than 5. I watched, in what felt like real time, as Janet slowly succumbed to her illness, steadied only by the droid she knew as Alice. The last recorded video, however, was almost 10 minutes long, the thumbnail showing a room engulfed in flames. Unlike the others, this one was titled, Bring to Justice. With a heavy heart, I hit play. The first 7 minutes were little more than smoke and fire as the droid swiftly sprinted through the burning building. Then the droid reached the door with the brass number 8 on it, grabbing the knob urgently, only to find it locked from the outside. This did not stop almost a ton of titanium plating and circuitry from punching it open. The room inside was already filled with smoke, but the droid quickly spotted who they were looking for. Janet was huddled against the wall, tears silently leaking from her eyes. Kneeling in front of her, the droid stated, "We must go." "No," was Janet's immediate reply, revealing that she was hugging the wood-framed photo of her grandson in his dress blues to her chest. "I remember him now, Alice. He always said he'd keep an eye on me, even if he wasn't around. And I think that was you. You were the only one who was ever nice to me here, Alice. You even came back. But please go. I don't want you to die." Here for some crotchety old woman. Let me die owning my mind. As she reached up to wipe her tears away yet again, I realized with a sudden shock that the purple and yellow marks on her wrinkled skin were not natural patterning, but instead vicious bruising. My heart slammed against my ribcage as Alice sat next to Janet, bringing the old woman's head to their chest gently and letting her cry. Not alone. There was a loud crashing noise, and the video ended abruptly, leaving me to stare at the hollow, screen in disbelief. Shock turned to grief. Grief turned to rage. Looking over at the metal body laid to rest on that cold, hovering slab, I felt disgusted. There was far more to this story than I could hope to uncover. Looking up at the sticky note on the wall behind my base station, I grabbed the phone and dialed the number. The first ring didn't even get a chance to finish. "This is Detective Clevens with the NDPD. How may I help?" It only took me a short time to relay what I had found before the old avian detective was on his way. Sitting in a chair to wait, it suddenly felt as though the room let out a relieved sigh. And looking at Alice's metal body, it suddenly felt just like looking at another machine. I felt a sad curl on my lips as I looked up at the ceiling. Rest in peace, Alice. We'll take it from here. Thanks for diving into this story with me. Don't miss out on the next one. Hit that subscribe button. Give this video a big thumbs up and drop a comment below with your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think.